All right, everyone, hello again, and welcome to the next installment of Truth Noir. I'm joined once again by my co-host, Adam Papagan.
That's right. Thank you.
He's been good enough to, this is the third time, I believe,
Isn't it?
you're joining me now, which means that you have been present for half of the Truth Noir episodes so far, so good tidings to you, sir.
I'm such a big fan. I'm actually in the show.
Yeah, man. I'm into it. I'm glad someone likes it. So yeah, last time this is kind of a part two, because last time myself and Dirk, who I know you're familiar with, according to him from last episode, he's none too big a fan of yours. I don't know if you were watching last week.
Oh yeah, that guy.
But
I'm not a big fan of his either.
But we were talking about things that have been going on in the world at large that are important, like they're big deal things that have been going on while everyone was busy getting amped up about Caitlyn Jenner and the Confederate flag and Donald Trump running his mouth.
He's great, isn't he?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, he's the best. He is the reason why stand-up comics and Jon Stewart exist.
But no, seriously though,
I mean,
I have a lot of respect for him, and here's why. He doesn't. He's just doing this to get a rise out of everyone.
Oh yeah,
as a joke, and our political system is a joke. Wouldn't you agree?
It is, absolutely.
And so finally, somebody has the balls to be like,
yeah, to just put
why
it out
can't
there.
I have an opinion?
To just punch you in the nose with and be like, here's what your system really is.
Any other politician, any of these things would have been the hugest gaffe. They would have been out. Like, he doesn't care. He's so rich. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
And so, like, for him, he's just having a good time. But I don't find it to be malicious at all. Like reading Lindsey Graham's phone number. Did you hear about that?
Oh yeah, no, I'm all about.
I laughed out loud when I read that headline. Not the joke about it, just the fact that he did that. I was like, damn, that's
Right,
funny.
yeah. Well, we're gonna do that on this show coming up soon. Like, if there are your elected representatives that are just putting aberrant garbage legislation out there, I want to seek it out and put it out there so that our tens and tens of viewers can call in with their disdain and anger at the system. So
Trump though is great because he has no policies.
right, yeah, no, he's just like I hate bombing.
Literally just like the opposite of like what every other politician. That's just the stance.
Pretty
That's
much,
so
yeah.
funny.
It's pretty excellent, and to his sole credit, I think that and he's leading right now, he might just do it.
He won't.
Well, no, I think
He doesn't want to be president.
He's the stand-in while the Republican Party prepares and grooms a candidate that's actually up to the task of lying bold-faced to the people, and that is willing to toe the party line. He's the one that's the comic relief before the headliner comes on, I think. But if he got in, I think that his campaign or his presidency would probably, either one of two things. He would get in there and be made to realize all of the horrible things that he has to agree to and keep his mouth shut about, and not be able to tell people about aliens and MK Ultra and all of this kind of stuff, that he might just resign after getting elected and be like, hey guys, this is what they're doing backstage. Or his presidency would be so full of just monumental failures, like bridges collapsing and I don't know what else, but that the people would be so enraged that they would like have a revolution.
That would be good too.
Yeah, either way, I can't say that it would be the worst thing in the world for him to get elected, but yeah. So there was Donald Trump acting all.
How did Donald Trump become famous? He's been famous since the 80s.
He has been famous, and I think it was probably Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. I think Martin Leach was that his
Robert
name?
Leach.
Robert Leach. I think he's to blame yeah, because otherwise he would have just been a dude that owned a hotel.
Because there's lots of rich guys. Lots of people are rich and they're not TV stars. And he was only on that Apprentice show because he was already really famous.
Right. Yeah. No. It's an interesting. It'd be interesting to see, and I wasn't paying attention really to his, rise. I think he probably just made the right investments and bought into the Miss America pageant, and did all of these things that eventually put him out there to the extent where, reality TV was like, hey, you want to host a show? Kato Kaeland is busy this week.
He got hardly any money for doing that show.
Oh, really?
He got like $200,000 for like the whole series.
Really?
The 10 years it was on. Because he's already so rich. He
Yeah,
just
but
wanted to do the
don't
show.
he's got to be getting a piece of
He has-
something, though.
He has billions of dollars.
True.
Whatever they would pay him, it doesn't make a difference to him. He just wanted to do the show.
Well, I know he inherited a lot of
Yeah.
money.
He's,
That was-
he's billions of dollars, though.
Yeah.
He doesn't, like, even like think of the biggest celebrity you can think of as like a actor, athlete or something. They have millions of dollars. He has billions of dollars. Like, he has so much more money than any other celebrity.
Yeah, he's got like Oprah money
Yeah, exactly.
or Tyler Perry money.
I don't even think Tyler Perry has billions of dollars.
Another thing that was going on was the Confederate flag debacle. And of course, everyone's like, "We got to take it down. This will end racism if we just take this flag down." And then what else? Just kind of running through the things we did last time. There's Mr. Trump again. We saw that picture before. I don't know if I put Caitlyn Jenner on, but she's been on there too. That and it's just this continual bombardment of just these three things over and over again. Caitlyn Jenner made a speech. Donald Trump ran his mouth about something. A bunch of KKK neo-Nazis were doing this while the Confederate flag was flying, and you don't really see anything else. And so me and Dirk talked about some of these things last week. Like the Earth has entered its sixth great extinction event. We're losing plant and animal species for at the fastest rate since the dinosaurs went out. And it took a giant meteor hitting the Earth for that to happen. And so we've started the ball rolling on that.
Change is a good thing, baby.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, yeah, I mean, it'll probably end with us not being here anymore. And
Great.
yeah, the Earth can heal itself finally. And then there was a heat wave in Pakistan that killed thousands of people. That was pretty gnarly. And then they found that cannabis oil, they had been doing trials on cancer research and found it to be an effective treatment for certain forms of cancer. And then also they found it to be very effective in treating autism. That these kids that were severe autism cases that didn't speak, they were just these severe cases that started to have very positive effects, but it hasn't been approved by the FDA, so you can't use it.
But it's helpful for people with autism? Because somebody told me, I think they meant it's an insult, and they don't know anything about autism or anything. But I was just talking about something like, you have autism, to me. Because, I'm into things and stuff.
Maybe.
Now,
Well,
we know a gentleman, a certain puppeteer, who
Yes.
does have autism.
Yeah.
So
well,
I don't know if I'm like
there's-
that, but
and there's certain very high functioning,
Yeah.
cases of it, and I don't know. You may very well be. It's not. It doesn't make it a bad thing or a negative trait necessarily. But I'm talking about the severe case of people that don't speak, or they can't function in social situations or whatever. That they've had these very positive effects occur through treatment with cannabis oil. And so, so yeah, there's all of that stuff that you should be yeah, let's help the Pakistanis. Let's stop the sixth great extinction event on planet Earth. Let's give the kids with autism cannabis oil if it helps them. Haven't heard about any of that. And so it turns out that there's more, there's more stuff that's been going on. And so we're going to get to our fracking water in a little bit. So, okay, we can go ahead and start here. So one of the things that's been going on is we give aid to a lot of countries. Israel is one of them. In fact, Israel is one of the top recipients of foreign aid, and it takes place, or it takes many forms. Some of it is military equipment. We just send over our old planes and tanks, and they use that to, drive the Palestinians a little bit further into the Mediterranean each year. Some of it is, medical personnel, things of this nature. But a lot of it is just straight up cash money. And so this amount has been continually going up and up and up over the years. It currently is at $3 billion a year. Next year, it's going to go up to $4.5 billion a year just in cash. And so for this particular kind of aid, what the Israeli government does is they buy treasury bonds, American treasury bonds, and then they collect interest on it. So every year they get $3 billion, now $4.5 billion. They buy treasury bonds and they just collect the interest on all of that money. And the interest on that money is paid by not only you and me, but every other American taxpayer that has a job. And so, it's just one of those things. And I was looking, and it's not just Israel, it's all kinds of, countries around the world. But they get the total foreign aid that America doles out to countries for whatever reason, in whatever form, it adds up to like almost $200 billion a year. Probably more than that by now. The figures that I looked at were a few years old. So when you think about $200 billion a year, that's like, it's a lot of things. It's like free education for every graduating senior from high school in America every year to go to college. It's free health care for everyone in America. A lot of good can be done with that money, and it just gets given away all the time. And it kind of bums me out, because there's certainly better things, because there's always, we don't have enough money to do this. It would bankrupt the country to provide these services for American citizens, but yet the money is there. Until, of course, it's not, because it gets given away to make war. And these are the things that I get upset about. Obviously, not all of the countries that we give foreign aid to are engaged in warfare, but the government of Israel has a pretty strong, policy of expansion, and that displaces a lot of people, in the name of Zionism. We also give money to Afghanistan and places that have been proven to fund terrorism. We have just gotten done occupying Afghanistan. We're on our way out for just that reason. And so yeah, there's that. What would you do with $200 billion, man? Aside from building a giant rocket ship. I know you're into space travel.
Getting off of the Earth? Well, besides any personal things I would want to do, you're doing socially, tackling social problems?
Yeah, I mean, if you were able to do some, good steward of the earth things, where would you start?
Micro investments. Think about a focus group today. So I went to this ad agency. It's in Silicon Beach.
Okay.
So they're ripping up all these wetlands to build these ugly buildings. I mean, they're cool modern buildings, but it's all the same crap, exposed bricks, whatever. So you go in, they've got all this crap in the lobby, like one of these new types of firms do.
Yeah.
And then they've got this life-size fiberglass cow painted orange in front of a wall of fake plants.
An orange cow.
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, I know this is the kind of thing where once you buy it, whatever. It's a one-time cost and you're doing the office factory in. But the $1,000, $2,000 they spent doing this, like that could buy lunch for for a homeless guy for like 5 years.
Probably.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just like buy lunch. Like, I wish, this is a slippery slope. I wish I did this more though, but on a few occasions, if like a homeless person's like asked me for like money and outside of a restaurant, usually Del Taco, I'll just be like, what do you want? Like, let's buy you some Del Taco. Like, I would use it for stuff like that. There needs to be more just getting people, I think, out of the mentality of poverty. Like, you don't need to eat food at the gas station. Like, you can like get food, like, you know, whatever. Like, it doesn't.
Right. Yeah. No, and that's a big part of it. There are plenty of things that you could do with $200 billion for the citizens of this country that have worked and paid into a system, you know, but to just, so you give that money away and you say, well, we don't have any money to provide goods, you know, services for the citizens, and then we pay interest on the treasury bonds, you know, also it's just messed up, man.
But the high standard of living we have in this country, even the poorest person in this country is so much better off than most other people, not only in the world, but throughout human history.
Sure.
So I think it's a small price to pay, this interest, considering Americans use so many more resources than in other countries.
Well, that's true too. I mean, we are pretty wasteful here.
We're paying a tax on our lifestyle as Americans. We gotta pay it to these other countries.
True. But I think my argument is more of, if we weren't giving that money away, and I'm not saying not giving all the way. There are nations that are benefiting tremendously, you know, from you know, medical and food supplies that we send, and if someone's benefiting from that, like above and beyond what they would be able to do for themselves right now, awesome. But you know, I feel like when we have more vacant houses in America than homeless people, because just the banks own them, there's some kind of turnaround there that we can do, you know, that that would be easy to do if some of that money weren't going to the places that it were going to. So there's that. What else? We have, oh, okay. So as it turns out...
Oh, a downward trending graph. That must be about America.
Yeah, it's here. We're starting off with this one first, though. Okay, so, yeah, so, you know, we have all of your, you know, most hated people in history. There's Saddam Hussein, and I don't know if these quotes are specifically accurate.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's Osama bin Laden, or at least one of his doubles, Joseph Stalin, Saddam Hussein.
They look a lot alike.
And of course, yeah, no, especially those bottom two. And then, of course, you know, we have Dick Cheney up there, who, you know, manufactured a lot of evidence that convinced the American people that it was a good idea to go to war and stay there for, you know, in some places where we've been like over 20 years, almost 30 years now. And so I was reading a report by the Pew Research Center, and they do a lot of polling and, you know, scientific research, a lot of like sociology kind of stuff. And their research, they polled, I think, 1,000 people from 40 different nations. So there's a lot of people, 1,000 from each nation, different parts of the countries. And what they found is that more people in America are pretty ambivalent towards torture than the average in other countries, by almost 70%. And there was another study I found that, and this goes back to the early 60s, and this is Donald Trump again, I love him. One more. Okay, so there was an experiment done in the early 60s called the Milgram experiment, named after the person who devised it. And here's a little infographic on it. So now the actual subject of the experiment is the person marked T. So what they would do is they would call these people in and they would say, we're having you participate in an experiment where you will ask a person in another room questions, and if they answer the question wrong, you will administer them an electric shock. And the more questions they get wrong, the more severe this electric shock would be. Now, there was no electric shocking going on, only the person sitting in that chair thought they were administering a shock. The person in the other room was an actor, and as the electric shocks got more intense, they would act out being more and more hurt by this. Now, the person marked E was usually a person wearing like a doctor's smock, or someone in some position of authority. And the more uncomfortable person T was, saying, "Oh, I don't know if I should do this anymore," person E would sit there and say, "You have to keep going. We're doing an experiment." And so what they found was that people, under the guise of obeying an authority figure, will do some pretty awful things. And so by the end of this experiment, the person marked L would keep getting these questions wrong, and they would be administered, or at least the person T would think that they were administering a voltage shock enough to stop their heart. And leading up to this, the person would be saying, "I don't feel good, my heart hurts, I feel like I'm gonna die." And at the time, they found that about 60% of people would go up to that point before they started saying, "No, I'm not doing this anymore," and defying the authority figure. And so so that's kind of in keeping, and those results are not nearly as high in other countries. America is kind of a weird anomaly when it comes to that. And so these are the, let me go back a couple. So these are the results. Everyone was down to shock someone once, and as you see on the bottom line, as the shocks get more severe, more and more people start refusing to do this. But you can see, like 60% of the people by the end, you see that triple X down there, that's a lethal shock that the person would have been thinking they were delivering, had no problem with it. And it kind of makes you think, like, what causes that anomaly in Americans? Because like other cultures in the world do not meet these same statistics. Any ideas?
Well, what causes this in Americans?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm sure if you did this on Chinese, it would be higher though, because they're a bunch of rule followers. I think it more boils down into
possibly
we're programmed to follow the rules.
It could be.
If a scientist tells you something, you got to do it. Also, we have a certain amount of trust that a doctor would not tell you to do something that would harm somebody else.
Right. Yeah, and that's true as well. But then we find in history that sometimes they do. You get, Joseph Mengele from
That's one guy of all doctors, and wasn't even in this country.
True, but I'm talking about the Nazi Party. The big defense in the Nuremberg trials was, I was just following orders, and as it turned out, that was not a valid defense, and all of those people were still, found guilty of war crimes and things of this nature, and so. Yeah, it was staggering because I was unfamiliar with the statistics. I had known of the experiment before, but I didn't realize that the numbers were that high. Yeah, and then and then following up on this, I saw that Eli Roth. I don't know if you're familiar with Eli Roth, filmmaker, a maker of mostly horror films. Right, he did Cabin Fever and the Hostel films, and so these are very gory, very torture is a lot of the plot of these films and trying to escape from it. And so he hosted a documentary that I saw recently where they redid the experiment, and his findings confirmed this, that the actual number, that the 60% number had actually gone up since then, not by a lot, but I think it was around 70%. And I was just like, really, like that's getting worse? Yeah, like it's frightening to think that 60% of the people, or more now, obviously, will just blindly follow orders like that.
It's called declining social capital.
Probably, yeah. Especially, yeah, you get paid $50 to shock someone to death, or I'm sure they got
not putting value in your other members of society.
Yeah, well, and you see it all over the place. Even down to the base minimum wage that they're trying to bring up. People are like, no, those people don't deserve to make that much money. And the truth of the matter is, everyone deserves to make at least that much money, especially if you live around here. Like, if minimum wage is supposed to be, and it was supposed to be a reflection of what is the base amount someone can make and be able to keep a roof over their head and food in their refrigerator and pay for whatever insurances that they need, like medical and auto insurance, and support a family, right? If that is still the case, if that's what minimum wage still means, California minimum wage at least should be like $17, $20 an hour. As far as being able to make a car payment, pay your insurance, like do the things that, or pay for public transportation, get your bus pass for the month or whatever, that those basic needs would be met. Because what is it right now? $9?
It's $9.
Yeah, like $9 is not enough to
Can't even buy lunch.
Yeah, like you would have to work for over an hour to pay for lunch while you were at work, which is an hour that you have to take off and not get paid. So yeah, if you worked an 8-hour day, you would leave with 7 hours of pay after you fed yourself while you were at work. And so it's these things that and we talked in a previous episode about this sort of cognitive dissonance, where you'd be like, oh yeah, if you asked everyone, well, do you think that everyone should, if they're working, if they should make at least enough money to cover all of their expenses, their basic needs of survival, you would say, well, yes, of course. But then when it comes to a matter of should people at McDonald's make $15 an hour, that's where that cognitive dissonance comes in, and people are like, no, screw those people. What do they do? They mess up my order and make my hamburger with too much mustard. Screw them. And it doesn't make sense to me. And it shouldn't make sense to anyone else. Like, you should think one thing or the other, because the two are not compatible.
There's more than enough to go around.
There is most certainly more than enough to go around.
I think it's just a matter of that, just redistributing, and just so people can just live like this. Nobody's asking for a cable TV and a new car or anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Just trying to live.
But then they call it class warfare when the people that are hoarding all of this wealth are called upon to help in that redistribution and support, or at least not object to, some of these regulations that were in place before the 1980s. Like, this was not a thing that happened so very long ago, where all of the corporate tax percentages just came shooting through the floor. And then what happened? All of your manufacturing left the country because it was no longer in their best interest to keep it here. And, and what you've had is a stagnation of wages over, maybe minimum wage has doubled in the last 30 years, but it certainly hasn't kept up with the cost of living or inflation or anything like that. So that brings us to my next thing. This is the next abomination that has been getting swept under the rug, and I hope it's a high enough resolution to. It's a little small, but this is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and basically what this is like NAFTA on steroids is what I've heard it compared to, and everyone was against NAFTA when George Bush Sr. proposed it. Clinton allowed parts of it to pass, and now in these closed sessions of Congress that no one knows about, they're putting through these massive changes and allowing for, it's basically like the European Union, but trans-Pacific. So all of the little red dots you see there are all of the countries that would be included. So you have, at first glance, Canada, Mexico, Chile, Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, Japan, it looks like China, and so this affects quite a bit of people. This affects over a third of the world's population. And what is going on here are sweeping deregulations of basically everything. Your internet privacy, the international laws are now being circumvented by this new proposed trade partnership, and it's bad news, because whatever laws these individual member nations had in place about preservation of resources or certain minimum wage labor practices, safety standards, all of these things are now allowed to be circumvented by corporate judiciary tribunals. And it's about 8 major corporations, like among them are Monsanto and Cargill, and you might not know the names, but they are the umbrella corporations that own, when we were talking about our globalization and how this one company owns like 80 other companies that manufacture almost everything you buy, right? These are the people writing this legislation. And so if a country, let's say, refuses to allow Monsanto to use a certain pesticide because it's been proven to be harmful, now the judiciary tribunal of the Trans-Pacific Partnership can then sue that nation for causing a loss of profit to a corporation. And that's pretty much the beginning of the end if it passes. Because what next?
1984.
Well, yeah, and you have all of these, you get, I'll tell you what you're going to get. You're going to get that. You're going to get flaming water. Because, there's no one can say no to people fracking in, on public land. You can't say no to, internet security, search and seizure. Like, it is a blanket proposal that basically takes all of the freedoms that you had to say no to these injustices and basically cuts them in half. In much the same way that like the Patriot Act did, but now it's not just happening in America, it's now on a much more widespread scale that affects a lot more people.
So we're spreading American culture all around the world.
Yeah, there's democracy for
returning to our roots of exploiting people and capitalism.
Pretty much, yeah. It's and it's it's just bad news, man. It kind of bummed me out reading it.
Well, don't take it too hard.
I'm not taking it personally, but like
it's a bummer, yeah.
but it's one of those things that is so it's such a huge deal. It's almost so massive that you're just like, psh, I'm gonna go get a beer or something, you know. but yeah, like just the way that the Industrial Revolution, as much as it revolutionized things, like it also displaced a lot of people from their jobs. And that's what this is going to do, in much the same way that after all of these corporate regulations got scaled back and scaled back, what happened to all of the high-paying manufacturing jobs? They left. And so you're going to see this on now a much broader scale. And I think you're probably going to see employment drop in the US and Canada and Japan, you know, because they can outsource their work to other places where people will do it way cheaper. And that's, I don't know, I just kind of feel like it's a backward thinking sort of thing, because no one benefits from that. You're not going to get your goods and services any cheaper. They're going to stay the same, and they're going to go up a little bit, and there's a few people that are going to make a ton of money off of it, you know? Pisses me off, man.
What do you think they're going to spend that money on?
I don't know. They're probably going to...
Real estate?
They're probably going to make more people police officers to deal with all of the protests that are going to be going on.
Well, people hate cops these days, so...
I know I do. I mean, like, not all of them, like, you know, there's that catchy phrase that's going around, well, they're not all bad. And no, of course they're not all, like, 100% of them, but you have the ones that are murdering people on the streets.
Yeah, like, I have no personal problem with the police at all. I've never had the police be anything but helpful to me, but they are shooting a lot of people.
Yeah, man.
An awful lot of people.
Like, so much that, like, it's unavoidable. Like, I'm sure the news media would like to not cover that, you know, but it's just like, it's happening everywhere, and it's happening multiple times a day, you know, and many times to people that are completely innocent. Like, oh, we arrested the wrong guy, and he had his hands on his head, and then he moved his hand, and we shot him point blank with a shotgun. You know, that was one that happened recently. Or that one girl that they found with a hanging in her cell with a trash bag over her head. They don't have trash bags in cells for exactly that reason. So the fact that, like, and they search people pretty well. You're not going to get in there with anything. So that looks pretty shady. And so yeah, there's the ones that are actually murdering people. And then there's the ones that are standing by and allowing it to happen. They know it's happening and they do nothing about it. And so that makes you guilty of a crime too. So these assholes combined with these cowards who are not willing to do anything about it, that makes up a pretty big block. Like, you have to be a brand new police officer to not know that these things are going on, and then not be able to be held accountable for not doing something about it, you know? So to the, I'm sure there's like maybe five good cops in America. Thanks. The rest of you are fuckers. So yeah, like, stop murdering people for no reason is another thing that's been going on.
But don't you think people should obey the police and not commit crimes in the first place?
Well, yeah, you know, but when your crime is, you know, moving plants that have been deemed undesirable, you don't deserve to get shot for it, you know? Like, yes, crimes, fines, writing you a ticket for something, okay, but the upscaling of violence against people who were not resisting, and even if they were questioning it, you're allowed to ask questions in this country, unless of course you're not anymore. That's not a new law that I've been familiar with, you know. But it seems like the you know, this sort of blanket sort of, oh, it's been 3 seconds since you didn't do what I told you to do. not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't care whether you have a badge or not, you're still a murdering piece of garbage. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's that too. Like, that's a thing that's been on the news that, also kind of seems that people should be getting really upset about also, that, at the widespreadedness of this, thing that's happening. And then you get the argument of like, well, maybe you should have just done what the police said. And I take this as like a kind of stepping stone to be like, well, what if I told you to come here and let me look through your pockets? You'd tell me to go fuck myself, right? Like, assuming we didn't know each other. And so, and the same is true with police. They have to have a reason for demanding that you submit to a search of your personal property. And this is not me talking a bunch of shit. This is called the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. And that's another thing they'll do, is they'll lie to you and they'll say you have to submit to a search, and then they'll kill you if you say no, or they'll arrest you if you say no and say you were resisting an officer. When the truth of the matter is that officer was just a lying piece of garbage that decided he wanted to make some problems for you. Again, they're not all bad.
Yeah, I see. I've never had a problem with the police. So I feel like I need to throw my experience in there.
Sure. Well, no,
I know I'm a white guy, been there for me, but I'm just saying personally. But they are shouldn't be shooting people.
Yeah,
But also there shouldn't be so many criminals. And maybe if people are criminals because of circumstance, that's a bigger problem. Of course it is. But I don't know. Do you want to deal with criminals? Cops have a tough job. And it's a stressful job.
Well, I think that...
and if we didn't have them, things would certainly
I think
be
it's one of those things, like, if they didn't walk up to you and talk to you like condescending fuckfaces, their jobs would not be as difficult, right? Like, I would be much more inclined to cooperate with an officer that says, excuse me, sir, do you mind if I ask you a couple questions? Than walking up to you being like, sir?
Like writing me a ticket or like taking a police report, then nothing ever happening. But I've never felt like targeted. I've never felt like, oh yeah, they're pulling me over for no reason at all. And another thing, most people I know who have some personal story about how they hate cops or some bullshit some cops did to them, it always starts with they were doing something illegal, and then this cop comes and then tries to harsh their mellow. It's like, if you're going to commit a crime, that's part of the risk. Now, of course, no one deserves to die for a petty crime, but if you argue with someone who's part of a group that murders people, like, you need to survive the encounter. People need to be smarter. They shouldn't be shooting people, but like, respect is a two-way street. Well, yeah, and maybe stop being a pusher. Stop being abusive to your wife. Stop doing graffiti. Stop all these things that are like harmful.
Well, and those are all very true statements. I agree with you.
But they should stop shooting people. That's all.
Man,
let's get on let's get one thing clear.
All of those things that are illegal do not necessitate at their end being shot. Usually at point blank range, and then of course they have to manufacture evidence to hide the fact that they did this, which makes them liars.
Yes.
And so I don't know how it got into got to hire more police officers after the Trans-Pacific Partnership happens, which will probably happen. As you have more civil unrest developing from these. Things that happen that people find out about, you have to find some way to deal with it. I heard there's new tactical weapons that the SWAT teams are using for riot control, one of which is a big, giant microwave dish. that, like, as you might imagine, it creates an intense burning sensation on the skin, and it's they're developing it for crowd disbursement. I don't think that's okay either, man.
But is this even a real thing though? Is this something you heard about on one of these websites?
No, this was a thing. This was actually on the news a while back that they were in development on as one of their non-lethal, and of course it's not lethal at the time, but like shooting microwaves at someone, it'll probably give you cancer pretty shortly thereafter, you know. We're not talking about like beanbag guns and rubber bullets. We're talking about stuff that cooks you. I don't know, man. It just it seems like the things that are going on, they put this layer of, you know, be nice to Caitlyn Jenner. And
who's they putting out these messages?
Well, you know, we were. I don't know if you were here for this episode, but it was the first episode that I did with Vince, and we were talking about propaganda and how it's used to modify behavior, convince people of certain things, you know, elicit some kind of behavioral response, and then we were talking about globalization. Well, who is it that owns everything? It's not very many people. And it is many of the same CEOs of these corporations that are involved in drafting the legislation for these, you know, Trans-Pacific partnerships and NAFTA and the European Union from way back in the early 90s, right? And so when I say they, I mean them.
Yeah.
Do I know their names? I could, you know, you could throw a couple out there. You could say, Rothschild, or you could say, who's the guy that owns all the newspapers, Murdoch, or, you know, but.
So you think they're constantly or consciously doing all these secret things that are not so much of a secret that people don't find out about them and speculate about them in order to control people?
Well, yeah, I think too.
Or are these just effects of capitalism run amok, or consolidation run amok, or globalization?
Well, I think it's when you consider the relatively small number of people involved and the relatively small number of people that control so much of the wealth in the world, I think that they could also wear that hat also of, you know, if your friend owns all of the media, right? If your buddy is Rupert Murdoch, and you say, hey, Rupert Murdoch, I need you to put a couple bullshit stories out there. We're going to put this this hyena named Donald Trump out there, and he's going to run his mouth. You just put that out there all the time, and then you cycle these 3 stories around, and then while you're doing that, we're going to make these secret deals that no citizen of the earth would ever want to be subject to. We're going to do that, and what does it result in for them? It results in very much more profit. It results in very much more power, just for the sake of having power, and I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that, yeah, their end game is something along that line, you know. When you think about all of the kind of big brothery things, you know, that are out there, you know, that they're keeping track of. And what is it in the name of? Well, it's to prevent terrorism. Well, as we look deeper into this, we find out that the ones that are responsible for all of this terrorism are the governments of nations. It's not like radical groups of people, you know, it's countries funding terrorism against each other to get the people upset to the point where they want to go mobilize and do this military operation somewhere else, when otherwise they would be like at home going to school and educating themselves or playing video games and eating Cheetos, but certainly not thinking about murder, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it is very insidious, and I think that the reason why this is not out there nearly as much, I mean, how much have you heard about the Trans-Pacific Partnership in comparison with what you've heard about either Caitlyn Jenner, the Confederate flag, or Donald Trump, you know?
Well, like you said, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is a bummer. People don't want to hear that.
Well, yeah, and you know, anytime you have the, I don't know, you call it the World Trade Organization or something like that, you know, people will go out in mass and they protest, and there's, you know, in certain places there's been riots that have happened because no one wants that, and they basically represent the same thing. It's the you know, it's the Trans-Pacific Partnership wearing different clothing, or it's the WTO wearing different clothing. I'm sorry, and so yeah, and that's why you have to distract people from it so that you can do it, and then all of a sudden it's just there. Oh, wait, what? Oh, can we do anything about it? No? Oh, shit. You know? It's a way to save yourself a lot of resources and having to rebuild cities that get destroyed by rioters when there's nothing to riot over, because they're all just like, oh, we agree that Donald Trump is an idiot, and we agree that Caitlyn Jenner should be treated with respect, and we agree that the Confederate flag should either be in a museum or you know, or as, you know, just respected as part of Southern heritage. Let's argue about all of that stuff while they're doing this horrible stuff, you know. I don't know, man. Any closing thoughts?
No, and none that would close it up. I mean, the only ones that would
Open it up to more.
Only Pandora thoughts.
Well, we'll have to save it for next time.
Absolutely.
Then. So, you guys, I want to thank Adam Papagan for his 50%. You get 50% stake in the show so far. There's no money involved, but I just appreciate you being here so often.
Yeah.
So thanks again for being here, you guys. Shit's getting fucked up. Start looking into it, and yeah, no, I'm sorry, it's a bummer. Like, it's not a fun thing to do, but you know, it's something that needs to be done lest history repeat itself. So take care. Thanks for watching, and wherever you're going, get there safe. Peace.